My name is Chelsea Wynn, 29 years old. The bus sighed like a tired animal as it released its brakes in front of Clearwater Bay Resort. I stepped down into the salt bright air, jeans sticking to my legs after the long ride, the scent of ocean and asphalt colliding. The resort rose ahead, white terraces, glass walls, sunlight bouncing off every surface like it was desperate to be noticed. The kind of place where the ocean was tamed into postcard perfection. I could have come differently. I could have arrived in something quiet but powerful, with tinted windows and a driver in a pressed uniform. But sometimes humility is the perfect disguise, the kind that lets you walk straight into a performance without anyone realizing you're the one who wrote the script. I adjusted the strap of my old backpack and followed the curve of the drive behind a parade of BMWs and Teslas. When the valet reached for my keys, his polite smile faltered for half a breath at the sight of my dented Civic. "Welcome to Clearwater Bay, ma'am," he said, that trained cheer returning. "Enjoy your stay." "Thanks," I said, taking the stub he offered. His eyes lingered on the rust at my bumper. Inside, the lobby was cathedral tall and sun-filled. Every surface gleamed: the marble floors, the rippling glass columns, the sculpted reef chandelier above reception. My pulse steadied. I'd approved those light fixtures 2 years ago. "Chelsea!" My mother's voice, as crisp as ever, sliced through the chatter. She sat near the panoramic windows with her sisters and their husbands, a half circle of linen dresses and expensive jewelry. Her smile was thin, but practiced. "There you are. We've been waiting since noon." "Traffic," I said. "It's a long drive from the city." Mom's eyes swept over my outfit, pausing at the frayed hem of my jeans. "You took the bus?" she asked, as though testing a rumor. "Convenient and cheap." "That's one way to put it," Aunt Sarah said, lifting her wine glass. "We flew in yesterday. The service here is extraordinary. The check-in, the champagne, the views. It's flawless." "It's beautiful," I said truthfully. "You picked well." "Your mother did," Sarah added quickly, her bracelets chiming. "She wanted something exclusive, somewhere we could all relax in style." Mom smiled. "Well, we deserve a little luxury, don't we?" Aunt Carol, gentler than the others, leaned forward. "You must be tired, dear. How was the trip?" "Fine. 5 hours. The bus had Wi-Fi." Mom sighed, as though I'd confessed a sin. "Still in that tiny apartment?" "It works for me." "So cramped. Our home in Raleigh has 6 bedrooms and feels small when we entertain." "Different priorities," I said evenly. My cousin Jessica, thumbs busy on her phone, didn't look up. "Still doing that data thing?" "Data analysis," I said. "Sounds boring." "It pays the bills." "Barely, I imagine," Aunt Sarah murmured. "Harold was just saying how unstable those tech jobs are." "I'm doing fine," I said. "Your company?" Mom laughed lightly. "Chelsea, you work for a company. You don't own one." I smiled faintly. "Right, my mistake." A valet passed behind us, carrying fresh orchids toward reception. My mother's voice kept moving, stories of charity galas, property investments, and new cars, as if she were narrating a highlight reel of superiority. I knew each role in this family drama by heart: Mom, the matriarch; Sarah, the rival queen; Harold, the financier; Jessica, the prodigy; and me, the quiet supporting act meant to make their glow brighter. "Dinner's at 7, Mom announced, tapping her phone. "Main restaurant. Dress appropriately. This isn't a beach shack. They have standards." Her eyes flicked over my t-shirt again. "I brought something nice," I said. "Nice by whose standards?" Aunt Sarah's laugh rang sharp. "No offense, dear, but your idea of nice might not align with this resort's dress code." "I'll manage." As their conversation drifted back to vacation homes and wine cellars, I excused myself, heading toward the elevators. The receptionist smiled politely as I passed, unaware that the woman in jeans was the one who signed her paychecks. My suite waited on this top floor, a space so polished it almost startled me every time I entered. Ocean light spilled across the hardwood, painting the walls in gold. I set down my bag and opened the balcony doors. The air tasted of salt and distance. Below, the resort thrummed quietly, staff preparing for evening service, the pool glimmering, a line of guests photographing the horizon. I could see my family gathered near the lounge, their laughter carrying faintly upward. From here, they looked small. I ran my hand along the marble railing, remembering the contractor's argument about using local stone. I'd insisted it was the only material that captured this particular shimmer at sunset. That memory made me smile. They'd soon be sitting in the restaurant I'd built from the ground up, eating from plates I'd chosen, savoring dishes designed in my kitchen, and they would have no idea. Still, under the calm, a tremor moved through me. It wasn't anger. It was something closer to anticipation, the quiet before a storm you no longer fear. I opened my closet and pulled out the black dress hanging there. It was simple, elegant, and intentionally unremarkable. The kind of dress that whispered rather than shouted. As I laid it across the bed, I caught my reflection in the glass. Sunset behind me, sea ahead, my face between them. For years, I'd been the family's quiet disappointment. Tonight, I'd let them keep believing it just a little longer, because sometimes the truth deserves an audience ready to hear it. The ocean's pulse below the balcony was steady, unbothered by human hierarchies. I took a deep breath and whispered to the waves, "Let them talk." The horizon flared orange, fading into indigo as night fell, my cue to take the stage. The restaurant smelled like browned butter and lemon zest, like ocean wind stitched to candle smoke. From the entrance, I caught my reflection in the vast panes of glass. The simple black dress, hair pinned back, the expression I'd practiced. Soft, unthreatening, absorbing. A host guided me along the windowed wall where waves kept time in the dark, and for a moment, every table was a small theater. Ours, of course, was center stage. "Chelsea," my mother called, raising a hand as if summoning service. "Over here." She had placed herself at the head, chin angled to the ocean. Aunt Sarah flanked her left like a second queen. Uncle Harold, cufflinks glinting, occupied the anchor seat opposite, the conqueror of unnecessary deals. Jessica scrolled under the table, her phone screen lifting and dimming like a heartbeat. I slid into the open chair near the end, between Aunt Carol and an empty place setting. "You look presentable," Mom said after a careful pause. "I'm relieved." "I'm thrilled to meet expectations," I said lightly. The sommelier arrived, posture perfect, hands folded at his waist. "Good evening. I understand you'd like to explore our Bordeaux selections." "Something with gravitas," Uncle Harold said, already pleased with himself. "Not the showy kind. Old world, restrained." The sommelier nodded. A 2012 St. Julien could be elegant tonight. Subtle cedar, graphite, black currant. "Lovely," Aunt Sarah said, cutting in. "Let's do 3 bottles. We'll share across the table." Mom placed a hand on the wine list as if blessing it. "Actually, let's have those of us who truly appreciate Bordeaux split the cost." Her lashes lowered, a polite veil. "No reason to burden everyone." A beat of silence found me. I smiled at the sommelier. "Water for me, please." It wasn't defiance, it was oxygen. "See," Mom said, relief wrapped in condescension. "Chelsea's perfectly content with simplicity." Menus unfurled like scripts. Waiters moved in practiced arcs, clearing nothing, touching nothing they didn't mean to. From the kitchen pass came the quiet bell I knew intimately. It rang twice, paused, then once. Chef Marcus's pattern for "Hold the course 60 seconds." The servers adjusted without speaking. My family didn't notice. "I cannot overstate the excellence here," Aunt Sarah said, turning her napkin with the elegance of a ringmaster. "The amuse-bouche at lunch, a revelation." "Foam," Jessica added, half listening. "People still do foam?" "Marcus does," I said, then covered it with a sip of water. "What's that?" Aunt Carol asked, kind curiosity peeking out. "Nothing. I read about him," I murmured. "He trained in Charleston." "Chelsea reads restaurant blogs now," Mom said fondly, as if praising a child for naming shapes. "How modern." Starters arrived in a quiet procession, seared scallops bright with citrus, a lobster bisque like velvet, tiny brioche rounds wearing butter like jewelry. Cutlery sang against porcelain. Conversation tightened, sharpened, found me with intent. "So," Uncle Harold said, "still in that 1 bedroom?" "1 bedroom," I confirmed, close to work. "Cozy," Aunt Sarah translated. "We upgraded the guest wing last year, converted the gym to a massage room. 6 bedrooms sometimes feel cramped when we entertain." "Different priorities," I said, same as earlier, like a mantra you wear to keep from drowning. "And the car?" Harold pressed. "Still loyal to that, what is it, Honda?" "It's efficient," I said. "Efficient," he echoed, tasting the word, like chewing cardboard to avoid calories. Harold, Aunt Carol murmured, soft warning. I'm being realistic, he said, spreading his hands. Chelsea, you're what, 29 now? 29, I said. At 29, most of us had achieved certain benchmarks, he continued. Property, equity, a car that starts without prayer. Jessica smirked without looking up, and a job that sounded like more than data. Data analysis, I said evenly. It suits me. Aunt Sarah tipped her head, compassion coiled like a snake. Sweetheart, those entry-level tech roles are precarious. Harold reads things. Does he? I asked. How impressive. Mom touched her pearls, the signal she gives herself to remain composed when enjoying herself too much. Chelsea, we simply worry you've grown comfortable with less. There's nothing wrong with modest living, of course. We just hoped you'd aspire higher, Aunt Sarah finished, smiling. You know, like experiences befitting a place of this caliber. The dishes pivoted. Scallops blushed under heat. The bisque breathed steam. I cut into one scallop. The center glistened, just translucent, Marcus's signature point, between silk and satin. I wondered if he'd changed suppliers. The sweetness tasted like a new bay. I tucked the thought away, the way some people hide love letters. This is what it's like at elite places, Jessica said, finally lifting her eyes to take a photo. Not the chain restaurants normal people go to. Normal people, Aunt Carol repeated softly, not approving. You mean like Chelsea's usual spots? Aunt Sarah asked, voice all sugar. No shame in preferring simple food. I like good food, I said, just without the commentary. The thing about luxury, Harold lectured, decanting his own sense of self into the glass, is you can't appreciate it until you've earned it. No explanation replaces experience. Earned being the key word, Aunt Sarah agreed. Anyone can pretend for a night. The real marker is being able to enjoy it without accounting. Mom found my eyes across the table. Her voice turned, just slightly, from velvet to stone. You don't belong at this level yet, Chelsea. I don't mean that cruelly. It's simply reality. This resort, this lifestyle, it's for people who've reached it, maybe one day, with better choices. Motels aren't shameful, Aunt Sarah added helpfully. They're practical. The words pressed into me, old fingerprints finding old bruises. Around us, a hush spread like spilled water, nearby tables pretending not to listen, phones angling just so. I set down my spoon, its curve catching the candlelight, and considered the familiar monologue. Accept help, accept place, accept the boundaries drawn around you, and call it care. I smiled, small and sharp enough to pass as polite. You're very generous with your assessments. Don't be defensive, Mom warned, as though I'd flung a glass. We're trying to support you. By offering to subsidize dinner, Aunt Sarah said, already sliding toward the bill. We'll divide the costs among those who can afford it. No need to strain your budget. I'm fine, I said. Pride, she diagnosed, exhaling as if I were a case study. Young people. Plates cleared. The second course landed. Lobster bisque poured tableside from a silver-lipped vessel, steam ghosting up. The scent. Shells roasted to mahogany. Tomato kissed by fennel, reaching for memory. The server's wrist angle was exact, a move I'd once had the staff rehearse with water pitchers safe from breakage. He pivoted left to right, not right to left. The choreography designed to avoid planters near the windows. I used to stand at the far pillar and watch them practice. I'd counted the steps with them. Chelsea? Aunt Carol asked quietly, leaning closer. Are you okay? I'm listening, I said. It's good to hear what people believe. Don't make this dramatic, Mom said. Her patience sugared. We're managing costs responsibly. You're our daughter, not our charity project. But we do have standards. You've made that clear, I said. Desserts were described, though not ordered yet. Deconstructed key lime, a chocolate torte that could make someone believe in forgiveness, roasted peaches in thyme syrup. The sommelier returned to refill only the approved glasses, skillfully bypassing mine as if his hand had a moral compass. Uncle Harold leaned back, thumbs hooked into the edges of his chair, surveying his domain. We were discussing investment properties earlier, he said conversationally, to the whole table, and to me equally. The coast is hot. Prices are astronomical. A smart investor gets in via consortium. Resorts like this are owned by conglomerates anyway. Individuals don't touch assets like that. Jessica's gaze flicked up, hungry for the next performance. Wouldn't it be wild if we owned something like this? Mom laughed, warm and theatrical. We'd at least belong. It was almost funny, how perfectly the night cued itself. I folded my napkin, not as an ending, but as a mark on the page where a chapter turns. My heartbeat was calm. The ocean beyond the glass pressed its steady hush against the windows like a hand on a shoulder. Well, Aunt Sarah declared, satisfied that the essential work of hierarchy had been completed, I suppose we finished our little audit. Chelsea, darling, truly no shame in simple tastes. Everyone needs someone average to keep them grounded. Sarah, Aunt Carol murmured, pain tucked into my name. I rose, not abruptly, not theatrically, just enough to make my chair whisper against the floor. Maybe you're right, I said, voice even. Maybe I don't belong at this level. And then a presence settled at my shoulder. Pardon the interruption, a calm, seasoned voice said. Miss Wynn? I turned. Richard Chin stood beside me, gray at the temples, posture precise, the kind of man who could fold chaos into a schedule and make it look like hospitality. His eyes, professional, steady, found mine with a familiarity that made the table still. Good evening, he continued, his tone low enough for us, but not so quiet the neighboring tables couldn't strain to hear. The contractors have completed the spa interior, tile alignment, and steam line testing. They're holding for your approval before they proceed with the landscaping. Also, the architect sent over revised elevations for the beachfront villas. I've placed them in my office for your review. If you have a moment after dinner. Forks froze midair. Aunt Sarah's mouth parted. Uncle Harold's hand slipped from his chair back. My mother's face emptied of color as if someone had pulled a plug. Richard inclined his head slightly, a deference he never faked. Shall I schedule a quick walkthrough tonight, or would you prefer to sign off in the morning? The room breathed in. No one at our table breathed out. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. You could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning, the distant clink of glass from another table, even the low rumble of the ocean through the window panes. My mother blinked first. I'm sorry, she stammered, looking at Richard as if she'd misheard him. Did you say approval? Richard inclined his head politely. Yes, ma'am. The contractors finished the spa renovations ahead of schedule. They need Miss Wynn's approval before continuing with the exterior work. And the financials came in strong this quarter, by the way. Revenue's up nearly 20%. The board will be thrilled. He smiled, professional, warm, but it was directed only at me. I didn't move. I just met his eyes and nodded once. That's excellent news, Richard. Let's review everything tomorrow morning. Very good, Miss Wynn. And of course, your residence is prepared, should you prefer that to the ocean view suite you booked for this weekend. I'll stay where I am for now. He gave a small bow, turned slightly to my family, and said, Enjoy your evening. Then he left. No dramatic exit, no raised voice, just calm efficiency gliding back toward the kitchen. But the space he left behind was charged, like lightning had passed through it. My mother's lips parted, soundless. Aunt Sarah's fork slipped from her fingers and hit the table with a small metallic ring. Chelsea, my mother whispered. What was that about? I rested my hands on the edge of the table. That, I said softly, was Richard Chin, the resort's director. He works for me. For you? Aunt Sarah repeated, her voice cracking on the last word. Yes, I let the single syllable settle. I own Clearwater Bay Resort. No one spoke. No one even breathed. The room had become an aquarium of stunned faces reflected in glass. Uncle Harold finally laughed, too loud and too forced. That's a good one, Chelsea. Very funny. It's not a joke. He blinked, then glanced at Mom for confirmation, as though she'd somehow correct me. But she didn't. Her gaze had gone unfocused, her hand gripping the edge of her napkin like it was a lifeline. I bought this property 3 years ago, I said evenly. It was valued at $47 million at the time. We've increased its worth to over $68 million with the expansions and new facilities. The spa Richard mentioned, the beachfront villas, the redesign of the restaurant, those were my projects. Jessica's phone slid from her hands onto the table. You own this place? Yes. Mom shook her head, almost to herself. That's impossible. You work for some data company. My company, I corrected quietly. Thomson Analytics. I founded it 6 years ago. We started with 3 employees. Now we have nearly 50 and offices in 3 cities. Uncle Harold swallowed hard. Wait, Thomson Analytics? You mean the firm that handles modeling for hedge funds? That's the one. He leaned back slowly, as if the chair might collapse under the weight of new reality. My God. Aunt Sarah gave a small, strangled laugh. But you drive a Honda. It's reliable, I said. Mom's voice rose, brittle and defensive. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at her. I tried. You never listened. That's not fair, she said quickly. Of course we listen. No, I said. You hear words, but you don't listen unless they fit your story. The table sat frozen, each of them locked in the strange purgatory between shame and disbelief. I mentioned once that I was starting a business, I continued, my voice steady. You told me it was risky and irresponsible. When I invited you to the launch party, you said you were busy that weekend. When I bought property, you assumed it was a condo. When I talked about clients, you called it cute that I was playing entrepreneur. Chelsea, Aunt Carol said softly, I'm so sorry. I should have. I shook my head gently. You were kind to me, Aunt Carol. That counts for more than you think. Mom's face flushed with color now, the shame turning to anger. So you let us think you were struggling? You let us embarrass ourselves? I didn't let you, I said. You chose what you wanted to see. Jessica crossed her arms, her voice thin and shaky. You could have corrected us. Would you have believed me? I asked. If I'd said I owned this resort, you'd have called it delusional. No one argued. That silence told me everything. I picked up my glass of water, the condensation running cool over my fingers. You spent the evening deciding who deserved to be here, measuring worth by square footage and wine lists. And all the while, you were sitting in my dining room, eating from my kitchen, under my roof. Uncle Harold cleared his throat. You could have told us privately, Chelsea. This display. I didn't plan it, I said. Richard didn't know I was sitting here. He just did his job. Aunt Sarah found her voice again, her words edged with panic. So, what now? You humiliate us in front of everyone? I didn't humiliate you, I said quietly. You did that yourselves. My mother's eyes shone with tears, but her pride was still fighting for air. Chelsea, we were only trying to help you. By reminding me I don't belong? By offering to cover my dinner? By telling me I should stick to motels? Her mouth trembled. We didn't mean— Yes, you did, I said. You meant every word. A soft murmur spread through the restaurant. People had stopped pretending not to listen. I could feel phones recording, glances darting, whispers rising. I didn't care. You've spent years making me feel small, I said, my tone calm, not angry. You needed someone to look down on. I filled that role nicely. Aunt Sarah fumbled for her glass. We were proud of you, in our way. Were you? I asked. Or were you proud that I stayed beneath you? The question hung in the air, sharp as glass. Finally, I stood. Your rooms are paid for, as always. The meals, too. Enjoy the rest of your stay. Mom reached for my wrist. Chelsea, wait, please. Don't walk away like this. I looked down at her hand. We've been talking for years, Mom. You just never heard me. Then I turned and walked toward the lobby, the soft hum of conversation blooming behind me like static. I could feel every eye in the room following me, but none of that mattered anymore. Richard was waiting near the entrance, posture still composed. Everything all right, Miss Wynn? Fine, I said, just a family matter. He nodded once. Shall I have Chef Marcus prepare something for your suite? Yes, something simple. Understood. I took the elevator to the top floor, the mirrored walls reflecting the calm I'd worked hard to wear. But as the doors slid shut, I caught my own eyes in the glass, steady, exhausted, but finally unburdened. For the first time in years, I felt taller than the people who'd spent a lifetime looking down on me. The elevator doors opened to silence. The top floor always felt different, cooler, slower, like the rest of the resort breathed beneath it while this level simply watched. My suite door recognized my key card and unlocked with a soft click. Inside, the lights had already adjusted to the sunset mode I'd programmed years ago. A warm amber glow filled the space, washing over the curved glass windows that framed the ocean. From here, the water stretched into forever, soft waves folding over each other under a fading violet sky. I kicked off my shoes and let the quiet settle. My phone buzzed before I even reached the sofa. Mom, 6:59 p.m. We need to talk. Jessica, 7:03 p.m. OMG. You could have told us? Everyone saw that. Aunt Sarah, 7:04 p.m. That was cruel, Chelsea. Absolutely unnecessary. Uncle Harold, 7:05 p.m. We can still discuss business. Potential partnerships. Aunt Carol, 7:06 p.m. I'm sorry they acted that way. Proud of you, dear. I stared at the screen, then powered the phone off. The silence that followed felt like air finally returning to a room that had been held too long in judgment. I walked to the balcony. The horizon was bleeding gold into navy. The sound of waves rose and fell like breath. Somewhere below, laughter drifted from the pool bar, faint and oblivious. It struck me that life went on here, families laughing, guests ordering cocktails, completely untouched by the storm that had just cracked my family in half. When the knock came, I didn't flinch. "Come in," I called. A young server pushed in a cart, draped in white linen. The scent of roasted vegetables and garlic butter filled the air. "Compliments of Chef Marcus," he said, smiling shyly. "He asked me to tell you congratulations on the quarterly numbers." "Thank you," I said softly. "Tell him I appreciate it." He left, and I lifted the lid. Pasta with fresh tomatoes, basil, and olive oil. Simple. Familiar. The first dish Marcus had ever cooked for me when I hired him. No caviar, no truffles, just food made to be eaten, not performed. I ate slowly, the ocean whispering beyond the glass. For years, I'd worked in the shadows, building, risking, growing, and somehow my family's opinion had still lived in my head like a ghost. Every success had come with their imagined disapproval. Every achievement, a whispered question. Would they believe me now? The answer had come tonight, and it hadn't mattered. When the meal was gone, I left the dishes and curled up on the couch with a thin throw blanket. The clock on the wall read 8:47. Downstairs, they'd be dissecting the evening, Mom pacing, Aunt Sarah furious, Harold calculating. Jessica would probably be posting something cryptic online about betrayal and humility. My phone buzzed again from the counter. I'd forgotten I hadn't turned it completely off. The screen glowed with one new message, from Aunt Carol. "Aunt Carol, I should have defended you. I knew they were being cruel, but I stayed quiet. I'm sorry. I always knew you'd make something of yourself. Proud of you, Chelsea. Truly." "That one," I answered. "Me. Thank you. That means more than you think." When I hit send, the tightness in my chest eased just a little. At 9:15, the phone rang again. This time the resort line. "Miss Wynn?" Richard's voice, calm as ever. "Apologies for the late call." "That's fine, Richard. What's happening?" "Your mother is in the lobby," he said. "She's asked to see you. She's been there for 20 minutes. I exhaled slowly, staring out at the dark horizon. "Tell her I'm not available tonight. She can leave a message, and I'll consider meeting with her tomorrow." "Of course," he said. A pause. "For what it's worth, several of your relatives have been asking staff questions about you, whether you really own the resort, how long you've been the owner, what your role entails." "And what are you telling them?" "The truth," he said simply. "That you purchased Clearwater Bay 3 years ago, that you've personally overseen its operations, and that you're one of the most involved owners I've worked with in 3 decades." Something in my throat tightened. "Thank you, Richard." "It's not a favor," he said. "Just honesty. Sleep well, Miss Wynn." When the line disconnected, the room felt impossibly still. I turned back to the window. The moon had climbed above the horizon, pale and round, laying a silver path across the water. Somewhere below, my mother sat in the same lobby I'd once redesigned from blueprints spread across this very floor. She was waiting, but I didn't move. Not yet. Maybe not tonight. I thought of the years she'd spent reminding me I didn't belong, and how, in a way, she was right, just not in the way she meant. I didn't belong there, under their hierarchy, beneath their measurement of worth. I'd built my own world, brick by brick, bite by bite, until I stood above the tide that once drowned me. I walked back to the balcony and leaned against the railing. The air smelled of salt and quiet. I could see my reflection faintly in the glass, superimposed over the sea. Below, the waves kept coming, steady, relentless, unbothered. It struck me then how much the ocean and I had in common. We both knew how to stay silent while reshaping entire shores. I turned off the lights, leaving only the moon and the sound of water. Tomorrow I'd decide whether to meet her. Tonight, I'd let the tide erase everything that didn't deserve to stay. The morning arrived quietly. The horizon was pale gold, the ocean almost still. I stood on the balcony barefoot, the first light touching the water below like it was trying to smooth away last night. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard echoes of my mother's voice, sharp, composed, trembling beneath its own weight. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes when truth finally burns through years of pretending. A knock sounded. I opened the door, expecting room service, but Richard stood there, holding a discreet envelope. "Morning, Miss Wynn," he said. "Your mother asked me to deliver this. She's waiting downstairs if you wish to see her." I hesitated, fingers resting on the envelope's edge. "Thank you, Richard." He nodded once and left. I took the envelope to the table and opened it carefully. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper in her elegant handwriting. Chelsea, I won't make excuses. I just want to see you. Please give me 10 minutes. I'm in the garden by the fountain. I stared at the words for a long time. They weren't much, but they were softer than I expected. When I finally went down, the lobby staff pretended not to notice. Word had spread. Politeness is a kind of armor in places like this. Mom was exactly where she said she'd be, sitting on a stone bench beneath a flowering magnolia. The fountain behind her tossed sunlight into the air. She looked smaller than I remembered. She stood as I approached. You came. I wasn't sure I would, I said. I know. She looked at me, really looked, not scanning for flaws or disappointment. I deserve everything you said last night. I didn't answer. I thought I was helping you by pushing you, she went on. But I wasn't pushing. I was belittling. I didn't even see it. You saw it, I said gently. You just called it love. She flinched but nodded. I was afraid, she admitted. When your father died, all I had was image, status, control, money. I thought if I lost those, I'd lose everything. And you. You never cared for any of it. You reminded me of what I'd buried to survive. Her eyes shone, but her voice stayed steady. Last night, when Richard said your name, I realized you became everything I pretended to be. The words sat heavy between us. The fountain's rhythm filled the silence. I didn't build this to prove you wrong, I said finally. I built it because no one believed I could. I believe you now, she whispered. I smiled faintly. That's the thing, Mom. Belief after the fact doesn't cost anything. She looked down. Can I fix this? I don't know, I said honestly. But you can start by stopping. She frowned. Stopping what? Measuring love by achievement. Talking down to people. Turning concern into control. You can start there. She nodded slowly. I can try. That's all I wanted, I said. Aunt Carol appeared in the walkway, hovering awkwardly before stepping closer. Morning, she said softly. I was hoping you two might talk. We're trying, Mom said with a weak smile. Aunt Carol turned to me. You were right, Chelsea. All of us judged you for not chasing the same things. We confused noise for success. Maybe we all did, I said. Behind them, I spotted Jessica and Harold lingering by the entrance, watching, uncertain. Harold looked uneasy, guilt mixed with calculation. Jessica's eyes were red, phone clutched tight in her hand like she wasn't sure whether to apologize or document the moment. I sighed. You can tell them they don't need to apologize, I said quietly. I'm not interested in revenge. Aunt Carol smiled gently. You sound like your father. Maybe I finally understand him, I said. Mom stepped forward. Will you come to dinner tonight? Just a family meal, no pretense. I'll think about it, I said. But if I do, there'll be rules. She gave a shaky laugh. Rules? No bragging about square footage. No comparing salaries or cars. No backhanded compliments. Just people eating dinner. She nodded. Agreed. We stood there for a moment, unsure how to end years of damage with something as small as silence. Finally, she reached out and touched my arm. I am proud of you, Chelsea, she said. Not because of this resort, because you built something real, and because you didn't let bitterness build you. For the first time, it sounded like truth. When she left, I stayed by the fountain. The magnolia petals drifted down into the water, spinning in slow circles before sinking. It felt fitting, letting the old things fall away on their own. By noon, I was back upstairs, laptop open, reviewing plans for the new beachfront villas. The management team gathered in the conference suite. Richard outlined next quarter's projections while I signed off on supplier contracts. Work always steadied me. It was honest, measurable, earned. When the meeting ended, I lingered by the window, watching the waves pull back from the sand. For a moment, I thought about last night again, the disbelief in their eyes, the mix of shame and awe. I didn't need to replay it anymore. I'd said what needed to be said. The rest was theirs to carry. The ocean was glittering now, alive again in full daylight. Somewhere down there, my family would be walking the beach, probably avoiding eye contact with the staff who now knew everything. I picked up my pen, signed the last page of the expansion contract, and smiled. The world outside the glass kept moving. So would I. Because success, I'd learned, isn't about being seen. It's about knowing, deep down, that you built something no one can take away. And forgiveness, it's not weakness, it's release. I glanced toward the sea one last time and whispered, "Thank you." Then, with a quiet exhale, I said what I always tell myself when a story ends and something new begins. Keep building. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story too.